Arms for the great work that they do. Chair apologizes for the delay. We had some printing issues, and I think that we now have everything that's to be passed out to the committee. The remaining document is being passed out to all committee members right now. You should have a copy of both the congressional and state house map, and also a document that's being passed out to you right now, which is an expert report in the pending litigation. Members, I will remind you, and we didn't do this in the last time when we were in this committee, but I'll ask members to please state your name before you speak each time, because while we don't have a court reporter in here right now, when they go back and try to transcribe this, it's sometimes difficult for them to know who's speaking. So when you're recognized to speak, just say, I'm Representative so-and-so. You don't have to say where you're from. You don't have to do all that. Just say, I'm Representative so-and-so, so they can identify you before you're speaking. Members, on the agenda, as you saw, the congressional map is for discussion only today. I will tell the members at this point, because we were so delayed in getting the other documents out here, and I know it's lunch, the chair does not anticipate having any discussion on that congressional map during this committee meeting, but watch your inbox. We may have a meeting this evening after session, and we'll have some committee meeting at some point tomorrow. But again, we're not going to bring up that congressional map in today's committee. We're only going to do the State House map. So members, with that, I will turn the gavel over to Chairman Sain, and I will ask Chairman Sain to recognize me to debate the bill. I need the map. There's maps. Print out.
Chairman Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I will try to be brief in my opening so I can answer your questions and hopefully not keep you in here too long today. Members, as you know, the Supreme Court held that our maps must, quote, give the voters of all political parties substantially equal opportunity to translate votes into seats across the plan, and that's exactly what the map before you today does. I will tell you that I have, along with the Speaker, we've worked with Representative Reeves where we could. We've met quite a bit with Representative Reeves to try to come to some compromise, and I can tell you that in a number of areas within the map, we've incorporated ideas from Representative Reeves and from the Democrats, and I'll also tell you that those discussions are ongoing today, and this map could perhaps change before we even get into session this afternoon. So back to the map. So how do we go about complying with the court's order with the map that you see before you? Well, we use the election data from 12 statewide races from 2016 and 2020 that were utilized by the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Mattingly of Duke University. And so what are the numbers on this map? Under the map that you've got before you today, Governor Cooper would have won 63 House districts in 2020. So Governor Cooper would have won a majority of the House districts in the map before you in 2020. While former President Trump, under this data set, would have won 62 House districts. Compare that to the enacted map where Governor Cooper would have won 58 House districts and former President Trump would have won 70 House districts. The Supreme Court told us that there are multiple reliable ways of demonstrating the existence of an unconstitutional partisan gerrymander. That's their quote. Their quote also said, in particular, mean median difference analysis and efficiency gap analysis were two important measurements. The map before you today meets both of the measurements that the Supreme Court gave us on those two analyses. Specifically, this map scores under a 1-point mean median difference analysis and under a 2-point efficiency gap analysis. The court told us that a mean median difference of 1% or less is presumptively constitutional. This map meets that. The court also told us that an efficiency gap analysis under 7% is presumptively constitutional. And again, this map easily meets that threshold. Furthermore, the court told us that we needed to quote, the court said, quote, the map exhibited a selective failure to preserve municipalities in the House map based solely on considerations of partisan advantage. The enacted map split 81 municipalities, and this map contains only 49 splits of municipalities involving population. The map also prioritizes keeping districts compact. Specifically, we improved compactness of the map overall compared to the enacted map using both the REOC and Polsby-Popper analysis, which this committee is very familiar with. Members, as you also know, the Stevenson case requires, to the extent there is legally significant racially polarized voting, the drawing of majority-minority districts as the first step in the process. However, the analysis performed by Dr. Jeffrey Lewis of UCLA determined that majority-minority districts are not required. And members, as a reminder, the Supreme Court adopted the trial court's findings of fact that, quote, in no district enacted or in 2020 does it appear that a majority of BVAP is needed for the district to regularly generate majority support for minority preferred candidates in the reconstituted elections. And members, now I'll briefly go through some of the groupings in the map that are and have been the most heavily debated in this committee on the House floor and the most heavily litigated. And we'll begin with Buncombe. In Buncombe, the map before you today, it changes from a 1 Republican and 2 Democrat map to 3 Democratic districts that split no municipalities except for Asheville, which, as you all know by now, must be split because of that city's sprawling geography throughout Buncombe County. In Pitt County, we've drawn 2 Democratic districts, which is a change from the previous 1-1 Democrat-Republican split in the enacted map. We kept Winterville whole, where the enacted map did not, and I know there was some dispute about ECU being kept whole or not that Representative Hawkins and I talked some about, and whatever the last map did, this one does not split ECU. In Guilford County, all 6 districts in this map were won by President Biden. Every single one of them were won by President Biden. The map keeps Summerfield whole, where the enacted plan did not. In Cumberland, we've drawn compact maps that keep Hope Mills whole, where the enacted plan had split Hope Mills. This map has 3 solid Democratic districts and 1 competitive district. In Mecklenburg County, President Biden and Governor Cooper won all 13 districts under this map. The map before you is a compact plan that splits no municipalities other than Charlotte and Huntersville, which must be split in the map. In New Hanover, we drew an additional competitive district based in Wilmington. In Cabarrus, we drew an additional competitive district, again won by Governor Cooper. In Robeson County, we drew 1 district much more competitive than the enacted plan. And in Wake County, especially in Wake County, we borrowed from a lot of the ideas from drafts provided to us by the minority leader in our negotiations. We kept Mooresville whole. We unsplit Roseville. Governor Cooper again won all 13 districts in Wake County under this map. Members, in closing, using the data that analyzed by the plaintiff's own expert, Dr. Mattingly of Duke, we've drawn a map under which Governor Cooper would have won 63 House districts in 2020. If that metric does not comply with the court's order, I'm not sure that I know what does. Members, I'll also note that you have the as to the racially polarized voting study, you have the plaintiff's expert report that is before you that was passed out. And Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to stand for any questions.
Gentleman yields. Representative Harrison.
Thank you.
And remember to state your name for the record.
Representative Pricey Harrison, Guilford County. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chair Hall. Just to start with, I appreciate your succinct analysis of what the court ordered, but I wondered if we could get a little bit more thorough highlights from our staff about the court's holding. Would that be possible if we have some time? Because I haven't had a chance to read the 200-page opinion yet, and I know the order was easy to digest, but there might be more to it.
Representative Harrison, hearing from staff back here, I'm not sure that anyone is prepared for that presentation at the moment. They also would like to be accurate when they present it, and they're not ready for your question. So I don't know how we resolve that here in the committee right now.
I appreciate,
recognized.
follow up. I appreciate that. I think it's probably important to understand what the court was ordering in the context of looking at whether we are complying with their order. And I guess specifically the point that, and I know everybody's working very hard and I appreciate the back and forth between the majority party and the minority party, but we just received these maps, these draft maps, a couple hours before the committee meeting, and I don't think that any of us, at least on our side of the aisle, have had a chance to actually digest them. I've just reviewed the court order before the committee meeting started, and I'm trying to understand about what it means. You have said that this meets the court says this meets the constitutionality, a mean median difference of under 1 point, and efficiency gap analysis. I understand there were others that were offered, close votes, close seats analysis, partisan symmetry analysis, and I guess the court was saying we could choose whichever ones of these measuring tools. Is that correct?
I think that's a good question that I wish the Supreme Court would have more readily answered. But what I can tell you, Representative Harrison, is that my reading of it is the court really focused on the mean median difference and the efficiency gap analysis. They gave us some bright line rules, or at least something approaching bright line rules on those two metrics. And as I said earlier, we've met both of those metrics.
I appreciate that follow-up.
You're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. I sure wish that we had a chance to spend a little bit more time and to spend a little bit more time understanding the impact as far as the Supreme Court's order goes. But I specifically with regard, because this has just come up from my constituents back home about Guilford County, it seems like the Mattingly analysis shows that this is that the gerrymander is extreme. The court found that the Republican gerrymander to be extreme in Guilford County, and that I understand it still uses non-compact districts to give Republicans a chance of winning 2 seats. I know you say that Biden won all 6, but also it shows the Mattingly analysis shows 5 seats should be solidly Democratic and 1 seat should be highly competitive. And I'm just wondering, because it seems like you sometimes follow the analysis and sometimes not, or the Mattingly analysis?
Yeah, so I respectfully would disagree with the lady's analysis of what we've done. I think that what the court told us is essentially we needed to look at these metrics across the entire map. Guilford County has districts that were all won by President Biden and Governor Cooper. Again, and let me strike that. I know they were all won by President Biden. I don't have in my notes what the Cooper scores were, but again, every one of these districts were won by President Biden. So I don't know that you can fairly say there are any quote unquote Republican districts in this Guilford County map.
I appreciate that. One more follow-up.
You're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you. And I guess there are similar concerns about the Forsyth County draw. The Mattingly analysis shows that it would reliably elect a Republican under analysis analyzing statewide results in a district that should vary between close and strongly favoring a Democrat. So we're probably going to respectively agree to disagree on that as well. But I did want to raise that since they are both close to home. And I'll just hold off. I may have more questions. Thank you. And I appreciate your work on this, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Representative Harrison. And for the court reporter later on, that was myself, Representative Destinall, and Representative Pricey Harrison in that exchange, and I didn't follow in my own direction, so I apologize about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions for our presenter? Representative Hawkins, you're recognized. Please state your name.
Glad to reintroduce myself. That's for you, Representative Satan. I'm pretty sure you got that reference.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Zach Hawkins, Durham County. Here we are, again. Talking about maps that have gone through litigation and hopefully will not have to be done multiple times in a decade. So that's why, my questions, that's sort of where my questions will lead us to, hopefully. So the first question that I have is you, in your opening statement, Mr. Chairman, you said where we could work with Representative Reeves. Could you elaborate on sort of that give me a little more explanation to where that went, like where we could, like what was the tipping point for you in not being able to work with
Well, again-
such a fine gentleman such as Representative Reeves?
Representative Hall, you recognize?
Representative Destin Hall. Certainly always enjoy working with Representative Reeves and you as well, Representative Hawkins. What we did, we looked at what the court said, and they told us statewide, here are the metrics that you have to meet. And so we felt like we drew a map that met those metrics, and we didn't feel like the court told us we needed to go extreme one way or the other within those body of metrics. And so, in my opinion, we are in a safe harbor within those metrics of constitutionality, considering, of course, all of the other factors that we have to consider, like compactness, for example.
Follow-up.
You're recognized for follow-up. Representative Hawkins.
Representative Zach Hawkins. And one of the things that you also mentioned was the fact that Governor Cooper and President Trump, I think split 63-62 based on your analysis. Those are pretty high watermarks because people pay attention to the top of the ticket. I think we all understand electoral politics and voter sort of reaction and response to those offices. What about the remainder of our statewide candidates? Do we know how they performed? I think that's also equally important and probably more accurate for voter appetite, voter activity.
Sure. We do have that, and I don't.
Representative Hall, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Representative Destin Hall. We have that. I don't know that it's been passed out. I don't have the packet that was passed out to committee members, but we took the ensemble of different elections. There were 12 statewide races that were considered, and we do have that. That was loaded into the computer terminals. Of course, the Democrats had one. We have one. All that was loaded in there. So yes, we do have it, and we can certainly get it to you.
Representative Hawkins?
Follow-up.
I'm sorry, Representative Zucca?
Just to note that it's in the packet that was passed out.
Yeah.
Representative John Zucca stated that it is in the packet. Representative Hawkins, you're recognized.
Yeah, and so I guess one of the things, with the packets being multiple here, took a little time to sort of, scan through these, and I'll come back to that question, but I think that's relevant to, our discussion, right? Related to how they decided to lean, and I'm pretty sure that none of them sort of met the mark of Cooper and maybe, maybe just looking at a few of them could be more helpful in guiding our discussion. So I'll go on and I'll come back to that, and I'll take Representative Zucca's suggestion of looking at that in the, sort of pile of packets that we did get. Follow-up, Mr.
Representative Zach Hawkins, you're recognized for follow-up.
Representative Zach Hawkins. All right. So one of the things that in Cabarrus, I want to ask about what the breakdown of Cabarrus and New Hanover competitiveness looks like.
Representative Hall?
Representative Destin Hall. So in terms of competitiveness, there are, and I'm looking at the map I have of just Cabarrus County, and I know this goes into other groupings. It looks like the composite for all of those races in District 82, which is the competitive district, was 52.08% Republican, 46.62 Democratic.
Okay. And let me follow up.
Representative Zach Hawkins, recognized.
Does your sort of meaning of competitive change from district to district, or does that remain consistent across what we determine as competitive districts?
Representative Hall.
What's the sort of range and the median of what the spread is across a quote-unquote competitive district?
Apologies, Representative Hawkins. Representative Hall.
Representative Destin Hall. I think it's in the eye of the beholder what a competitive district is, but it's more so than that. I mean, it depends on a given election. Certainly, 52% to 46% composite is a district that either side could win in any given year. And in a good Democratic year, they could win. In a good Republican year, they would probably win.
Okay. Follow up.
Representative Hawkins, recognized for follow-up.
Representative Zach Hawkins, Durham County. So one of the districts, of course, that, and I think my colleague, Representative Harrison, may have alluded to it, but it's looking at sort of the analysis, especially, racially polarized analysis of Wayne County specifically. And so in your mind, in this particular district, do you think that there is equal opportunity for an African-American, specifically for black voters, to elect someone of their choice in that district? Does sort of the composite of that district in a partisanship or in, from a racial perspective, do you think it meets the criteria to even be eligible for black voters to have the choice of their candidate?
Representative Destin Hall, you're recognized.
Representative Destin Hall, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hawkins, as I said earlier, my reading of the plaintiff's expert is that there are no VRA districts in North Carolina because there is no legally significant racially polarized voting. And so I think in that particular district, we can't draw a district to meet those requirements that you may be talking about unless we first have the evidence of racially polarized voting. It would not be permissible for us to do that. And so I do think that that this district is legal and would meet any legal standard.
Got it. Okay. Next question was.
Representative Hawkins, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Yep, thank you. Follow-up, thank you for the follow-up. Representative Zach Hawkins, Durham County. And then last, and then I'll yield to other colleagues who may have questions around the competitiveness in Cumberland County, what the breakdown of that competitive district is in Cumberland County.
Representative Hall.
Representative Destin Hall. So again, that is 3 Democratic districts and 1 district that is essentially a toss-up. The composite, and again, I think all this is in that packet, but we can certainly get it from members if it's not. And so the one toss-up district is a 50.06 Republican, 48.81 Democrat composite.
Okay, and then last question.
Representative Hawkins, you're
Last
recognized.
follow-up. Representative Zach Hawkins, Durham County. And, and so as we're looking through Durham County specifically, I'm familiar with that area. Could you walk us through how you or whomever assisted in drawing that area sort of decided on the district outline?
Representative Hall.
Yeah. Representative Destin Hall. Representative Hawkins, I'll tell you, under the time crunch we had this time, I had Representative Sane and Representative Stevens and other members come in and help me. And I don't believe I was the person who actually drew that one, but I can tell you generally, in looking at those standards that the court gave us, we knew that just had to be a Democratic district at the end of the day. And so we drew it a clear Democratic district, and I can see in your district you're probably going to do really well in this election.
Follow-up.
Representative Hawkins.
I would likely do well in any district, but I think the follow-up for me is one of the things that's pretty important, and I think we argued this, it was argued through the trial, but then also argued in, when we were doing the redistricting, is that communities of interest are very, very important for all areas. And so even though in a partisanship perspective, I think this district is right, it will lean a certain way from Democrat, but I think making sure that people have the opportunity to again, when someone like Representative Zane, of course they know who to go to for all the things that are happening in their community, right? And so I think that just as we're thinking through this, and of course there are other examples, again I'm going to yield for other colleagues, but that's just an example in one that you don't have control of in a partisan perspective, where the issues of community interest are not held intact. So with that, I'll pass it on to someone else. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Hawkins. Other members of the committee seeking recognition. Representative Harrison, and then Representative Cooper next.
Thank you, Chair Sane. Pricey Harrison again. And I wanted to follow up on line of questioning that Representative Hawkins raised, Chair Hall, because I'm reviewing while we're talking. So we all received this letter from the Southern Coalition of Social Justice. It was dated February 15th, 2022, yesterday. And I haven't had a chance to give it the deep read that I need to give it, but I was comparing it to the requirement in the Supreme Court order that's on page 8 about the General Assembly must first assess whether using current election and population data, racially polarized voting is legally sufficient in any area of the state, such as Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act requires the drawing of a district to avoid diluting and the voting strength of African American voters. And it sounds like from the SCSJ letter that they indicate that that House District 10 satisfies Jingles criteria. The report that you all distributed is the report that's dated December 28th during the trial court proceeding. And I guess I'm kind of confused if we are actually complying with the Supreme Court order in that regard, since it looks like the SCSJ analysis indicates that we do need, that the district does satisfy the Jingles criteria, and then a racially polarized voting analysis should have been done. And I guess I'm confused about how that plays out.
Representative Hall.
Representative Destin Hall, and I answer the first question. The analysis is done. We've used the plaintiff's analysis in the case to show that there is no legally significant racially polarized voting, thus that would require a VRA district. But I would say as to the SCSJ, I think I've got that acronym right, SCSJ letter that lady references, I've not had time to study their submission in detail. Obviously, others the lawyers involved in the case have had some time to do that. And I'll tell you, my reading of it, my understanding, again, I have candidly not read the letter that you referenced, but I know the gist of it. We do know that the majority minority districts they've proposed in that letter, they're not based on compact minority population. They closely resemble those 2011 racially gerrymandered districts that were declared illegal by a federal court. So that's first problem. The other one is that in that letter, SCSJ, it's my understanding that they use gerrymandered majority minority districts to attempt to justify using race to draw what are called crossover districts, and which is prohibited by the Bartlett SCOTUS Supreme Court of the United States decision.
Representative Harrison, you're recognized for a
Could I
follow-up.
follow up? Pricey Harrison still. I guess the letter that they've sent us includes a map of a district that they thought complied with the Supreme Court order.
Representative Harrison, excuse me one second. Representative Hawkins, your microphone's still on. Thank you very much. I apologize, Representative.
Oh, sure.
Harrison.
So it seems like the letter that they distributed to us contains a proposed district that seems to comply with the Supreme Court order and meets the Jingles criteria and satisfies that. I guess we're just going to agree to disagree that there's no racially polarized voting. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Cooper Suggs.
Linda Cooper Suggs, Wilson County. And I just want to follow up in regards to the racial polarized discussion that we're having. And we know that in the beginning we had asked for a racial polarized analysis. So I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you say that based on the court's ruling, because the court just instructed us to do this, did we do that? Has that been done? And if so, where is it? Or did you use some other resource? Is that what I'm hearing?
Representative Hall.
Yeah, Representative Destin Hall, the report that you have in front of you, that is the study that was completed. Again, we're using the plaintiff's expert in that case. And we feel like that is really the best evidence that we can possibly use. Again, the plaintiffs are the folks who are suing us and say that our maps are unconstitutional for a number of reasons. We're using that expert report in terms of a racially polarized voting study because that really takes away an argument that we have somehow made a study that's more favorable to us than the facts would allow.
Before I recognize you for a follow-up, Representative Brockman, I see you on the WebEx, and we'll come to you next. Representative Cooper Suggs, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Yeah, Linda Cooper Suggs. And I guess my follow-up is in regards to when the courts mandated, when they sent their ruling, and telling us to do this, to do the racial polarized analysis, but yet and still we use the research from another person, from the plaintiffs, then have we really complied with what the courts have asked us to do from a legislative standpoint?
Representative Hall.
Thank you.
Representative Destin Hall, and the short answer is yes. I believe, we've taken, again, the plaintiff's own report on this issue, and that's what we're using to make our decision about drawing maps. My understanding is that, that the lawyers will also be submitting some other study to the court later on. But what we are using the plaintiff's expert on to make the decision about not drawing BRA districts.
Thank you very much. Representative Cecil Brockman on WebEx, you're recognized.
Representative Cecil Brockman, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take you back to Gifford County. I see with Gifford County, you have Jamestown, the town of Jamestown, broken up into 2 districts. As the current representative of Jamestown, all of Jamestown right now, can you talk to me a little bit about how that decision was made and if you think it's possible to keep Jamestown whole as a community of interest?
Representative Hall, you're recognized.
Representative Destin Hall, and give me 1 minute. Let me pull my Forsyth map.
It's Gifford County.
Thank you, Representative Brockman. I think the gentleman mentioned Forsyth. I think it's on the same page as Guilford, so. I'm not sure what you can see on
Yeah.
WebEx, but he's looking for that right now.
Yeah, Representative Destin Hall, and again, I don't have the pack in front of me, but my understanding is the part of Jamestown that's split has no population in it.
Representative Brockman, were you able to hear that answer?
I did. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other members of the committee wishing recognition? Representative Hawkins, was that and then Representative Harrison.
Representative Zach Hawkins, Durham County. So I want to go back to got a chance to research just a little bit with sort of who was able to win statewide with the congressional districts. And so can we talk about that at this time, Mr. Chairman?
Representative Hall, that's
Fine
fine with
with
you?
me.
So I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. And so if we're looking at, I believe it's 47 Democratic seats for Yvonne Hawley, who was a candidate for lieutenant governor, and 55 for Jessica Holmes, who ran for Secretary of Labor. And so so given sort of those, and I just want to make sure anyone can help me verify these numbers because I just sort of glanced because I wanted to get back to this discussion as soon as we could. With that portion of it, are we still confident that we've not only sort of done what the courts have asked us to do, but also are drawing maps in good faith, both from a racial perspective and from a partisan perspective, given the numbers that Yvonne Hawley won 47 compared to, Roy Cooper, for all intents and purposes, who's been on the ballot since the year 2000. And so I don't know if he is an accurate description, nor a presidential candidate that had over $100 million spent. Does that make sense? So I think more accurate is to look at the 47 and the 55 versus those high watermarks that you gave. And so I want to make sure that given that data, and we're sort of out in the open about that now, if we really think that we're moving in the right direction.
Representative Destin Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Destin Hall, and I appreciate the gentleman's question. And the answer is yes, I do think we're complying with the court's order because they gave us the metrics, and we're using those metrics. Efficiency gap sort of is what it is, whether you look at those particular races or not. And mean median, again, another study that Mr. Chair may want to, if staff may want to be recognized to describe that if they possibly can. But I think that those two measurements, as outlined by the Supreme Court, solve that issue, and we are within the safe harbor that they gave in the case.
Thank you, Representative Hall. Any member of staff like to attempt to answer that question?
And Mr. Chairman, while we wait, I think what I would, if staff just could confirm that with mean median, that it's not really a factor in terms of those individual races that are across. I think it's a statewide average in terms of total votes. I think so. It doesn't really look at race by race, each campaign the way we're talking about right now. But we're all learning this at the same time, Representative Hawkins. So.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to try that one.
Okay.
This is
Erica,
Erica
you're-
Churchill. And so with the Maptitude reports for mean median, they can be run race by race. However, we as central staff have not run those on any of the plans before the committee today.
Follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hawkins, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Yeah, and so, thank you for that clarification. And I would say that it would be important to me as a member of the committee and someone who, of course, is invested, just like all of us, the time and the will to get these maps right for the people of North Carolina. Because just because the data isn't available doesn't mean someone doesn't know that data and is able to use that data. Because it's easy to throw out that 63 votes were won by Cooper. Again, he's been on the ballot since the year 2000. The voters of North Carolina know that particular person, regardless of his partisanship. And so I think just because we know that number is the case, were we working from that number? Or do we know that, again, these other candidates didn't do as well, and what we're using sort of Trump and Cooper as exemplars, right? Knowing that that's not sort of the real level of voter activity, nor is it really sort of based on the true election status, right? Or what we potentially could look forward to in 22 and 24. So anyway, I just want to make sure that I ask that particular question, that are we working off of the fact that we knew that Cooper wins 163, or are you working off other data, just like I gave you? Knowing that, again, those two races are exemplars and not the norm.
Representative Hall.
Representative Destin Hall. And I think I understand the gentleman's question, and, my answer to it is, we obviously, both sides in this thing have experts who will look at and calculate that kind of measurement that the Supreme Court has given us, and our maps have been sent to an expert to tell us whether we meet mean median, whether we meet efficiency gap, and I'm told that we do meet both of those thresholds. My understanding of both of those is it would not be affected by the analysis that the gentleman's putting forth, and I understand that while Roy Cooper may have done very well, another Democratic candidate down the ballot maybe did not do so well. But again, I think that's why that efficiency gap and mean median sort of accounts for those discrepancies in the data as you run down the list. But the other thing that I'll say is, and I think this has been the crux of a lot of partisan gerrymandering cases across the country, as I understand it, is the argument that, people vote for one party for president and they just go down the ballot these days. That's been, one of the main contentions is that you can predict all these races because whoever you vote for president, you're going to vote for that same party for down ballot races. Now, whether we agree or disagree with that analysis, that's been largely the argument, is that's why, courts say they have to get involved because we can predict, so well what's going to happen in the future. I happen to disagree with that because I know, back in the last or the decade of the 2010 election, Democrats had drawn that map and Republicans won on it. And so we know that over time, elections change. So that's a long way of saying I think the mean median and the efficiency gap do deal with what you're talking about.
Thank you. Representative Hawkins, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Last follow-up. It's just worth noting that in order for Republicans to win on maps in 2010, they had to be fair maps. So I'll leave that last little piece for you there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Harrison, I had you next.
Thank you, Chair Sain and Chair Hall. I apologize. Pricey Harrison still from Guilford County. Apologize for the browser questions. I know y'all worked really hard and the court has given us a very truncated schedule, so there hasn't been a lot of time. But I will just repeat that I think that it's really important before we vote on these maps that we all have a sufficient time to analyze, because I'm still trying to understand the import of these maps that we got this morning. And I have heard some concerns about some of these draws, if I could ask you specifically about them. One is House District 83. It seems that, trying to pull up my questions, that it seems like the Kannapolis is split more than in the previous map.
Representative Hall, you're recognized.
Representative Destin Hall, Representative Harrison. I don't have in front of me, what's more or less. I can just go I can go off what the Supreme Court told us, and that is try to make this map better, look at these factors. I can tell you the map as a whole is more compact than the enacted map.
I appreciate that, and I don't want
Representative
to.
Harrison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Sane. I don't want to belabor the point, and we've got session in an hour. As I said, I hope we have some more time to look at this map before we vote on it. It seems like the Onslow-Pender County grouping, and this was a concern with the first set of maps, still splits the most Democratic precincts with higher black populations in Jacksonville, in the eastern part of the city. That was I believe that was also in the previous map. And it looks like in District 53, Harnett-Johnson County line seems to be shaped kind of oddly and changed quite a bit from the previous version. Do you have any recollection of what happened there?
Yeah, again, just an effort to make the map more compact.
And that was Representative Hall, for the record. Representative Harrison, you're recognized for follow-up.
I really do think this is the last follow-up, Pricey Harrison. So I appreciate these improvements to the previously enacted map that was found to be an extreme partisan gerrymander. I think there's still a better way to do this. I think that the House District 10, I think that it's clear based on the information that the SCSJ lawyers sent us that we need to draw a district that has enough black voting age population to allow equal opportunity to avoid vote dilution. And I guess I should just make one other point, because you have mentioned several times the plaintiffs and experts, and I assume you're talking about the Mattingly report. And just so folks know, we do not have that in front of us. We do have the Lewis report, but we do not have the Mattingly report.
Mr. Chairman, if I may too, and I
Representative Hall, you're recognized.
Clarify one thing I said. What we passed out and what we're looking at is the Dr. Lewis report, which is not the plaintiff's expert, and I apologize for my misstatement earlier. And I will say, because last time we were in here and we were getting amendments, sort of at the end, and I, said that was sort of frustrating, and I'm frustrated with this process this time around, that we have so little time, and I wish we had more time for everyone to look at these maps. And if you'll remember, we did try to delay the primary further, knowing it looked like we were going to have to redraw with the hope of. And nobody wanted to delay the primary. But, I mean, it was one of those things that if we needed to have more time to redraw, we were going to have to delay the primary. And we all know, what a long process this is in this committee. And you think, well, if you've got 2 weeks, you ought to do it. As the lady knows, 2 weeks on the redistricting committee is really no time. And so we're having to sort of throw things together as best we can. But with that said, I can tell you we've spent a ton of time drawing this map to try to meet the court's requirement. We've met with Leader Reeves quite a bit, the Speaker, myself, and tried to do what we could in the court's truncated timeline with, really an unprecedented decision in North Carolina, and trying to really understand what the metrics mean they're trying to give us. And so I will say I wish we had more time to look at it, but as the lady knows, we've got to submit these maps before Friday, and trying to do all we can to meet that deadline. So I appreciate the lady's patience.
Any other members wishing recognition? Chair sees none, and none on WebEx. Representative Hawkins.
Representative Zach Hawkins, Durham County. I did want to follow up with the staff request that I made earlier about when I potentially could receive that information. Is it possible to do that before session? Because I'm assuming we're supposed to still go in at 2 p.m.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, Representative Destin Hall, I will make sure that you get that information before we go into session. My guess is we're probably going to be delayed a little bit on session. We don't want to, I don't know that staff has time to get this bill out of here and get to session by 2 o'clock. The other thing I'll say is keep in mind that we did a composite number of all of those elections. So the numbers I was reading to you earlier, those were composites of those 12 elections. So they sort of took into account both, Roy Cooper's election and, somebody way down the ballot, or not, I shouldn't say way down, in another race who may have been a Democrat who didn't do as well. Those are composite scores, so it tries to deal with that data that may not always line up between members of the same party.
No.
So, but we'll make sure that you get that, and I'll work with staff and work with you to make sure I understand exactly what you want. We'll get it.
Yep, follow-up.
Recognize for follow-up.
Yep, and the sort of the trend that I'm looking at, just in sort of, pulling it together back of the napkin, is that especially for statewide minority candidates of color that ran, they did not do well in the outline map. And so they're underperforming, whereas, again, you took the composite, it looks like 63, but when you disaggregate that, it, potentially, and again, we'll find out when she sends the data, that statewide candidates of color did not do well in these individual maps. And so, again, I'd love to talk to you about it further, but I wanted to make sure we had all that data. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee seeking recognition? Chair sees none. I'm sorry, Representative Stevens,
Yes, for a motion,
you're recognized for a motion.
move for favorable report to House Bill 77 and back to the floor.
All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. In the opinion of the chair?
Division?
Division has been called.
Mr. Chairman, if you will do a roll call vote with the clerk.
The chair will honor that, and the clerk will call the roll.
Representative Adams. Representative Adams, aye. Representative Brockman.
No.
Representative Brockman, no. Representative Carney.
No.
Representative Carney, no. Representative Cooper Suggs.
No.
Representative Cooper Suggs, no. Representative Dixon.
Yes.
Representative Dixon, yes. Representative Hardister.
Aye.
Representative Hardister, aye. Representative Harrison.
No.
Representative Harrison, no. Representative Hawkins.
No.
Representative Hawkins, no. Representative Brendan Jones.
Aye.
Representative Brendan Jones, aye. Representative Mills.
Aye.
Representative Mills, aye. Representative Reeves. Representative Reeves, no. Representative Rogers.
Representative Rogers is on WebEx, and Representative Rogers,
Mr. Chair, he did a thumbs up.
I'm sorry, Representative Rogers, the chair did not see that. If you intend to vote in favor, you can use the thumbs up, thumbs down. I think the chair can reasonably discern what you mean. Or you can turn on your microphone. I see a thumbs up. Other members of the committee can verify that as well. That is an aye.
Representative Rogers, aye. Representative Soka.
Aye.
Representative Soka, aye. Representative Warren.
Aye.
Representative Warren, aye. Representative Zachary.
Chair does not see Representative Zachary in the room.
Okay. Representative Stevens.
Aye.
Representative Stevens, aye. Representative Bell. Representative Richardson.
No.
Representative Richardson, no. Representative Sane.
Aye.
Representative Sane, aye. Representative Torbett.
Aye.
Representative Torbett, aye. Representative Destin Hall.
Aye.
Representative Destin Hall, aye.
Clerk is tabulating the vote, and we'll give you that count shortly. By a vote of 12 to 7, the motion does pass, and we stand adjourned. Thank you.